Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of the motion to concur signify by saying aye. Those opposed, no. The motion carries. And
Mr. Speaker, can I get a copy?
the clerk will get...
This was the Minnesota House, not the Jerry Springer Show.
We have no idea what's in this bill.
Representative Speaker, point of parliamentary inquiry.
Freshman legislator Jon Applebaum was there. Here's Tim O'Brien.
Governor Mark Dayton announced on Tuesday afternoon, May 19, that he will indeed veto the Education Finance Bill, House File 844, that was hammered out by a conference committee and approved by the Minnesota Senate and State House.
I wasn't planning on seeing many of you until March 8th.
A very tired Tom Bach, Senate Majority Leader, spent a few minutes with reporters.
The negotiations between the governor and the Republican-controlled House absolutely stalled. And I found
We welcome for the first time at Democratic Visions Representative Jon Applebaum. John, good to see you again.
Nice to see you too, Tim. Thanks for having me on.
John, I've seen the video of the final moments of the House session that just took place, or let me say I endured watching the final minutes of the House session. But you were actually on the floor. What was your perspective as that nonsense was going on?
Well, that's right. I had a front row seat, and really it was an education in how government is not supposed to work. It was total chaos and really a disappointing way to finish an incredibly disappointing session.
I move that the House do now adjourn.
Representative Pepin moves that the House...
Your background, John. I know that you represent 44B, part of Minnetonka, part of Plymouth, and Woodland. Is that correct, John?
It is. It's my hometown district. I've lived there all my life. And
Minnetonka boy?
Minnetonka boy. I went to Hopkins High School.
Good. But
was in the Wayzata School District. It's been a lifelong dream of mine to represent my hometown district at the legislature.
And I also know that you succeeded to our friend John Benson's seat when John decided not to run again. Now, you won a very highly competitive primary last year. You won it, and then you went on to win the general election. What were you campaigning on? What were you telling the voters and trying to get them to vote for you in that election? What were your issues?
Well, Tim, living in the area my whole life, I kind of got a sense from talking to my friends, neighbors, community members on what their priorities were, and those are the issues that I focused my campaign on, and that is education, the economy, and transportation. I mean, other issues were important too, but overwhelmingly, those are the three issues I heard the most about, and those were the issues I campaigned on and have tried to work toward now as an elected official.
How did your priorities do in this last legislative session? Now, I know that you were in the minority, and being in the minority is not a very enviable position over at the state legislature, but having said that, tell me about what went on first in education.
I authored an exciting piece of legislation that would offer a $5,000 refundable tax credit on student loan debt for anyone in Minnesota. It was authored with the intent on encouraging people to want to be in Minnesota, continuing their education here and their careers here, because people are leaving more often than they're coming to stay here, and that occurs most frequently with college-age students.
Wait a minute, no, that sounds like it's a reasonable proposal. What happened? Why didn't people embrace that?
Because it cost too much money, they assumed, even though it was completely scalable, which again is disappointing. But the fact is, Tim, and you could apply this to anything, there's a limited amount of money that we have access to in the state budget, and the Republican majority wanted to focus that on their corporate special interests, reducing their taxes, and put the corporate special interests ahead of every other type of need that we have.
And it is incomprehensible that a state tax cuts for millionaires.
Governor Dayton blasted the legislature for its failure to address his #1 priority, funding a pre-kindergarten for 4-year-olds statewide. What do you think about the governor's position in that regard, and is he right when he takes on the legislature for that?
I fully support the governor's position when it comes to educating our earliest learners. You know, with the $2 billion surplus, the Republican majority in the House was sitting on a golden opportunity to make historic investments in all areas, in particular pre-K, which the governor mentioned all along was his top priority. And they didn't. They would rather spend money on tax breaks for millionaires and billionaires and their corporate donors. And it's really unfortunate that ultimately a $25 million difference in a $42 billion budget is what caused a special session, because Republicans don't care about our earliest learners.
Now, I know you can't get up on a soapbox and tell us what you think is going to happen in the special session, but you're going to be there, and what do you think the outcome is going to be?
Well, I would like to say there is going to be a compromise, but everything we witnessed over the past 5 months suggests that Republicans are completely unwilling to compromise. That's why we don't have a tax bill and we don't have a transportation bill. I would give the legislature an F when it comes to transportation, Tim. Nothing was done because the Republican majority did not present a real plan. They failed to compromise, and they failed to deliver any sort of reasonable solution to fixing our infrastructure throughout the whole state of Minnesota.
The legislative leadership has been quoted as saying, well, we'll deal with transportation next session. Well, next session is an election year. What do you think the prospects are of dealing with transportation on a global basis during an election year?
I think that will not happen.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, so that people aren't going to touch that issue. So this was the opportunity this year to pull together some sort of plan that made sense, and it's gone.
Again, with a $2 billion budget surplus, so many needs could have been addressed. We could have made so many incredible, helpful investments in areas, not just transportation, but all over the place. And the Republican solution is to cut spending around the, across the board, eliminating MinCare of all things, taking 100,000 people off their health insurance. I mean,
the working poor.
Correct. And that's not what Minnesotans want, and it's not a good way to govern, that's for certain.
I had the sense going into the legislative session that this was almost going to be on autopilot. We're sitting on a $2 billion projected surplus, and me and others would have thought that the legislature, working together, could have come to some reasonable utilization of that program, perhaps putting some monies into the rainy day fund, spending more in education. What would you have done if you're the man? You're going to decide how that $2 billion surplus is used. Just in general terms, what do you think it should have been allocated to?
Invest in education. Not only the earliest learners that we talked about before, pre-K, but student loan debt and reducing the burdens that so many young people have. I mean, it's inexcusable to me that the Republicans did nothing to address student loan debt and college affordability. I mean, students are going to have to pay more to attend the University of Minnesota and MnSCU institutions despite having a $2 billion surplus. The DFL froze tuition with a $627 million deficit, and the Republicans are raising it with a $2 billion surplus.
I mean, I think that's a bombshell. I mean, you got people out there that are going to be indebted for the rest of their lives. They're not going to be able to buy houses. They're not going to be able to raise a family. Something has to be done for them, and I at least like your idea of a place to start.
Exactly. Minnesota has the unfortunate distinction of having the 4th highest student loan debt average of anywhere in the country.
Did not know that.
And that is unsustainable and not what we should be having here in Minnesota.
What about putting some of the projected surplus into the so-called rainy day fund? The economy in Minnesota is cyclical, and we're riding high right now, but tell me what it's going to be in 5 years. I'd like to know that. Would you have allocated some more money into that, or do you think we should put it into immediate needs?
I think we should save some in our budget reserves, and we need to have a healthy amount of reserves in order to address those situations. At the same time, I would provide for significant tax decreases for everyday working Minnesota families and not cut taxes on corporations and millionaires and billionaires.
What did House Republican leadership say when you told them of these ideas? They must have had their own preconception as to what they wanted to do, and come hell or high water, they were going to do it.
They have demonstrated that only one issue matters to them, and that is taxes. The Tea Party has taken over the Republican House caucus, and taxes and lowering them for their corporate donors is the only thing they care about. So they're not interested in any of my ideas or my colleagues on the Democratic side of the aisle's ideas. We got to do a better job in getting people out in 2016 so we can get the majority back. This past election was a record low turnout. It hurt all of Minnesota because of this radical budget that the Republicans attempted to pass. The fact that 4-year-olds and $25 million in a $40 billion plus budget has caused a special session should encourage everyone to go out and vote, because we need a government that can do the right thing and do it on time. You know, a Republican majority has not finished on time since 1999.
Good point, and that leads me to my next and actually concluding question. Give me about a 30-second summary of this legislative session, your first legislative session. Tell me what you think went right, if anything, and what went wrong.
I'm trying to be positive. You know, no one likes a complainer, but not a lot got accomplished this session, Tim, and we had a golden opportunity with a $2 billion surplus to address so many important needs. And the Republicans really left Minnesota kids behind. I mean, they're the biggest losers. Their budget is going to result in student loan debt increases in tuition. Greater Minnesota got left behind with no broadband, realistic broadband help.
What about the rhetoric I heard about how the Republicans are out there to assist the rural areas?
Yeah, well, what they say and what they do are completely different things. There's no meaningful broadband assistance. Rail safety measures were all rejected. Campaign disclosure measures were all rejected. I mean, they're trying to cut people off of their health insurance, $100,000 for Minnesota Care, which thankfully didn't get adopted in the conference committee. What I experienced was just disappointment. Disappointment with how many missed opportunities we had. But at the same time, I am hopeful that the economy is picking up. We're going to have more money to work with and address some of these needs next year. And hopefully we can reflect the priorities of real Minnesotans, not people sitting up in skyscrapers that donate to campaigns.
John, I have to tell you, you're exceedingly articulate and obviously very thoughtful. And
well, thank you.
I want you to keep at it. You know, I know it's hard over there, but you'll be in the majority before you know it, and you'll have a great career. Thanks for stopping by.
I certainly hope so. Thank you for the nice compliment. It's a pleasure to be here.
Democratic Visions is independently crafted by volunteers, mostly Democrats, from Eden Prairie, Minnetonka, Edina, and Bloomington.